You lie still, cradled in darkness, as the world fades around you. The air is soft and still, a gentle hush drawn like a blanket across your senses. Your breath slows. Not because you force it to, but because the body knows how to rest. It remembers. And beneath that rhythm of in and out, a quieter rhythm plays on. The silent orchestra within you. Inside your body, something ancient is humming. It doesn't make a sound, not in any way your ears can hear. But if you listen differently, through imagination, through stillness, you begin to sense it. A language written not in words but in threads. A code woven not in lines, but in loops and spirals. This is your DNA. And tonight, you drift inward, toward that quiet song beneath your skin. Imagine yourself shrinking, softly folding inward. You are smaller than a dust mote, smaller than a breath. Floating gently through layers of yourself. You pass through your skin, the warm barrier to the world. You move through the corridors of muscle and fluid. Drifting like a feather in a silent tide. Soon you arrive at a single cell. The cell waits, like a temple in twilight. Inside, it holds a secret, a coiled message, tucked away in its heart. This is the nucleus. And within it, your genome. A collection of letters, arranged in a language older than history. You enter. The space inside feels infinite, yet delicate. As if light itself were breathing here. In the center, you find it. Your DNA. A long, spiraled thread. Not one continuous line, but 23 paired strands, like braided ribbons of light. These are your chromosomes. You watch as the thread begins to unwind. Not unraveling, but revealing, like a scroll opening under candlelight. It is exquisite. 2 ribbons wound together in a twisting staircase. A double helix, smooth and serene. And between those ribbons are steps. Tiny rungs made of letters, A, T, C, and G. 4 letters. Over 3 billion of them, arranged in perfect pairs. A with T, C with G. Always those pairs, like gentle hands reaching across a bridge. From these 4 letters, all of you is written. Your heart's rhythm. The way your blood clots. The color of your hair. Even how you curl your toes in the night. The thread doesn't shout. It whispers. And as you listen, you begin to understand. This is not just a blueprint. It's a memory. Your DNA is old. Some parts are unchanged from creatures that lived hundreds of millions of years ago. You carry the echoes of fish that first crawled onto land. Of mammals who huddled in the dark while dinosaurs thundered above. And closer still. You carry pieces of your parents, and theirs, and theirs. Generations folded gently into the spirals. A gene is a message. A recipe, a rhythm, a single task written in letters. Some genes tell your body how to grow collagen for your skin. Others build the channels in your nerves. Some are silent now, switched off like lights in a quiet room. But they remain, part of your architecture. You float past a gene for eye color. Yours may be brown or green or gray. But this stretch of DNA has traveled through time. Passed like a thread in a long quilt sewn by ancestors you'll never meet. Farther down the spiral, you see a mutation. A tiny change in a single letter. Once, long ago, it may have been a mistake. But not all mistakes are wrong. Some gave survival. Some created resistance to disease. Some became the spark of something new. A wider nose for humid air. A tolerance for milk. A way to carry oxygen just a little better in thin mountain wind. The thread is alive with possibilities. Not all are used. Not all are useful. But they are kept, carried, preserved like poems folded in a drawer. You reach a section that was once called junk. That name is fading now. Scientists are learning that what once seemed silent may be subtle instead. Timing switches. Spacers. Instructions for when and where and how genes sing. Even the pauses in a song carry meaning. So too in your DNA. And still, your body reads it all. With every breath, your cells follow this code. They copy it, repair it, translate it into molecules. Proteins fold and stretch and spiral into being. Each one a tool, a bridge, a shape made from instruction. And all from letters. Just 4. It seems simple. But it's not. You drift deeper, into the heart of this spiral. Imagine an orchestra playing a symphony. And every instrument is playing from the same score. Yet the music changes depending on who plays, and when. That is how your genes are read. Not linearly, not like a book. But like music. Layered, timed, adaptive. The same gene may play differently in your liver than in your brain. One cell may shout it loudly, another may never play it at all. You are not built by instructions alone. You are built by interpretation. By timing. By harmony. And yet, sometimes the harmony breaks. A single letter misplaced. A sequence missing. A duplication folded too many times. And suddenly, a disease begins. Cystic fibrosis. Sickle cell. Huntington's. Stories rewritten by the tiniest of errors. These are not failures. They are simply part of the great variation of life. But they are painful. They take, when they could have given. And so we wonder. What if we could change the thread? What if we could go into this code? This twisting miracle. And correct the pain before it begins? This is the question that hovers like mist in the next room. The quiet question. The dangerous hope. Science has begun to answer it. Not with dreams, but with tools. There is a tool now, small, sharp, precise. It can find a word in this massive novel and rewrite it. It can search the spiral, clip a section, and change the letters. It is not magic. It is CRISPR. And it is real. You will meet it soon. But for now, you rest. You float among your spirals. Their glow as soft as candlelight in a warm room. Each twist a story. Each rung a possibility. You are built from memory. But you are also built for change. And somewhere, not far from your own body, the edits have already begun. In a quiet lab. Under quiet light. Someone is already reaching into this code. Not to read it. Not to remember it. But to rewrite it. The thread stirs. And in the next chapter, you'll meet the tool that makes such rewriting possible. Not a scalpel, not a brush. But something far more precise. Something that moves like a needle through the helix. You are drifting. The spirals of your DNA still glow softly in the dark. Each one coiled like a lullaby around your thoughts. You have seen the thread that holds you together. A thread made of 4 letters, arranged in a language older than speech. Now, another shape begins to form before you. Not natural, like the spiral. But crafted. Deliberate. It glides into view with quiet precision. Neither menacing nor gentle, simply present. You recognize it not by sight, but by purpose. This is CRISPR. And though it does not breathe or feel, it carries the possibility of changing life itself. You hover beside it. This tool so small it moves through cells like a wind through grass. Barely noticed by the body it enters. Yet its presence is profound. It doesn't just look. It acts. CRISPR is not a machine. It is a system. A method borrowed from nature itself. Long ago, bacteria learned how to defend themselves from viruses. And in doing so, they evolved a kind of memory. They kept fragments of viral DNA, like wanted posters in their genomes, ready to recognize and destroy the invaders if they returned. This bacterial defense, sharp, elegant, became the inspiration. Scientists studied its quiet dance for years. They watched how it cut, how it recognized, how it remembered. And then, like a whisper turning into a word, they saw how it could be guided. Guided by a strand of RNA. A tiny messenger that carries the address. CRISPR listens to that guide. It follows it through the crowded city of the genome, until it finds a perfect match. Then it stops. And it cuts. Clean. Quick. Exact. As if it had always belonged there. You imagine a tailor bending over silk. Scissors in hand, eyes calm, hands steady. That's what CRISPR feels like. A tailor for the thread of life. Once the DNA is cut, the cell rushes to repair it. Sometimes, it stitches the break imperfectly, leaving behind small changes. A missing letter, a broken sentence. Other times, with help, the cell is given a new template. A rewritten script to follow. A correction. A replacement. A hope. And so, in quiet labs across the world, CRISPR becomes a tool not of destruction, but of healing. It can remove the faulty gene that causes sickle cell disease. It can delete the mutation responsible for certain inherited blindness. It can silence the gene that allows viruses like HIV to enter a cell. Each of these edits is precise, deliberate. Like choosing one note in a song and changing its pitch. You drift beside CRISPR now as it moves through a simulated cell. The space is warm and luminous, filled with the slow pulse of organic rhythm. You watch it navigate the spiral of DNA, stopping at a sequence it recognizes. The guide RNA, a folded whisper, binds softly to the target. Then, a protein called Cas9 makes the cut. Not with violence. With intention. You watch the helix part. A gentle cleft forming in the center of the scroll. And then, you wait. This is the crucial moment. What happens next is not dictated by the tool, but by the cell. It may panic and try to seal the gap quickly, often creating small errors in the rush. But if given a model, a correct sequence nearby, the cell may pause, consider, and rebuild with care. This is how precise editing is done. Not by force. By guidance. And this is what makes CRISPR different from all the tools before it. It doesn't replace a chapter. It corrects a word. It doesn't rewrite the entire song. It tunes a single string. Imagine a child born with a single broken note in their music. A gene that makes every breath harder. Every movement painful. Now imagine that before birth. A tool like CRISPR gently edits the faulty note, returning the melody to harmony. The child never knows what was fixed, but their life is changed forever. You move now through a field of possibilities. Cells that glow with potential. The promise of medicine without pills. Of treatment that begins at the source, not at the symptom. CRISPR is already here. It has already worked in people. Restoring sight, easing disease, opening a door to healing. Once thought locked forever. And yet, not every door leads to a place you want to go. The ease of editing raises other possibilities. If you can remove disease, can you also remove sadness? If you can prevent suffering, can you enhance joy? Can you choose eye color? Height? Intelligence? The questions begin to drift toward you, like snow. Because while CRISPR began in healing, it does not stop there. The line between therapy and enhancement. is thinner than the edge of a Cas9 blade. You begin to feel the edge of uncertainty. A gentle shadow that balances the light. If we can edit life before it begins. Who chooses what gets changed? Who decides what counts as broken? And what is simply different? You return to the idea of the tailor. Not all cuts are corrections. Some change the shape of the garment. Some take away something essential. What if you remove a trait that, in time, becomes an advantage you never predicted? What if the silence you edit out of a gene was the pause that made the song beautiful? And then, the deepest question. Should we edit the genes of embryos? Those not yet born, not yet capable of choice? What rights do they have? What voice? You are floating now at the edge of a new frontier. A place where the science works. But the meaning is still unfolding. A place where parents, doctors, scientists, and ethicists must speak softly and listen deeply. Where decisions echo not just through one life, but through generations. Because some edits are passed on. Changes made to an embryo can ripple outward. Into children and grandchildren. Like ink spreading across fabric. This is called germline editing. It is not simply about healing one person. It is about shaping a future that cannot consent to be shaped. And so, while the science becomes more precise, the questions grow louder in the quiet. What is the cost of perfection? What do we lose when we no longer accept chance? You look again at the thread of DNA. Twisting like starlight through a sea of possibility. It is not perfect. But it is beautiful. In its flaws. In its surprises. In the way it holds both suffering and strength. CRISPR is a needle. A tool in our hands. But hands can create or destroy. Can comfort or control. And what we do with that needle. What we choose to snip, stitch, or leave untouched. Is no longer just science. It is story. It is philosophy. It is humanity. You begin to rise again from the cellular world. Carrying the weight of this quiet power. It hums around you. Not urgent, not loud. Just present. The thread continues to spiral below. Unchanged. But perhaps not for long. Because somewhere in a lab, someone has already begun to change it. Not to heal disease, but to design a child. And in the next chapter, you will drift toward this possibility. Into the still, glowing chamber. Where the first edited babies have opened their eyes. The night is still, and you drift again. The memory of the thread is still with you. That glowing spiral within your cells. So fragile, so full of meaning. You've seen the needle now. You've watched CRISPR cut and stitch with elegant calm. And somewhere in your mind, you carry a quiet awe for what's possible. But possibility has a shadow. And tonight, you enter it. Imagine a room. Not a nursery. Not a garden. But a lab, quiet, polished, humming softly with machines. The air is filtered, the temperature controlled. Everything is sterile, exact. And in this room, a life begins. Not in the warm curve of a womb. Not through the hush of whispered lullabies. But in a dish of liquid and light. A single cell, fertilized. Human. Whole. And now, editable. This is not the future. This has already happened. You hover near the memory of that room. 2018, in southern China. A scientist named He Jiankui performs a procedure that had only been imagined, debated. Never done in human embryos intended for birth. The goal? To protect children from HIV. A virus that weakens the immune system. Passed through blood and birth and time. He used CRISPR to alter a single gene called CCR5. A gene that, when removed, might make a person resistant to HIV. 2 embryos were edited. 2 baby girls were born. Lulu and Nana. Names that drift now through headlines and hesitation. You sit quietly with the weight of it. Because while science has long dreamed of curing disease, this moment felt different. It wasn't about treatment. It wasn't about healing the sick. It was about prevention. And it came before breath, before memory, before consent. These children will live their entire lives carrying a change they did not choose. An edit made not in response to illness, but in the pursuit of protection. You begin to feel the complexity. It's easy to celebrate the idea of health. To imagine a world without inherited disease. Without suffering written into genes. And CRISPR offers that dream. A garden without weeds. A life without genetic pain. But who decides what is a weed? You walk now through that imagined garden. A place where children are no longer shaped by chance, but by choice. You see rows of embryos under glass. Each one surrounded by data. Height projections, intelligence scores. Risk levels for diseases decades away. The room is quiet. But the silence is loud. This isn't a place of evil. There is no malice here. Only intention. Parents wanting the best for their children. Doctors seeking to eliminate suffering. Researchers following a thread of knowledge to its next glowing knot. But intention is not the same as understanding. You look closer at one embryo, marked for editing. Its future has been shaped before it even begins. A small deletion in one gene. A tweak in another. All to make a life better. But better is a fragile word. Once, the gene for deafness was seen as a flaw. Now, the deaf community celebrates a rich culture. Formed not in spite of silence, but through it. What if we edit out a future that could have held its own kind of beauty? You imagine a world where no child is ever born with a disorder. But also, no child is ever born with surprise. A world of symmetry, where unpredictability is trimmed away, like wildflowers from a garden path. And still, some may say, is that so wrong? To protect a child from pain? To offer them a chance at longer life? Sharper mind? Stronger body? Wouldn't you choose that? But the question is not what can be done. It's what should. And who decides? Because beneath the science, beneath the glint of precision and the hum of labs, there is a shift. A quiet movement. From parenting to programming. You think of the ancient chaos of reproduction. The way genes shuffle and dance. The way 2 sets of DNA come together. Not to produce perfection, but possibility. CRISPR interrupts that dance. Not rudely, but with direction. And so we arrive at the edge. The edge between therapy and enhancement. Between compassion and control. Between what nature allows and what we now command. You sit beside that edge. There is no clear line here. Only soft sand, shifting underfoot. Today, CRISPR might be used to prevent cystic fibrosis. Tomorrow, someone may use it to increase muscle mass, or boost memory, or change the tone of a voice. And once the edits begin, they do not stop at one generation. An edited embryo grows into an adult. That adult has children. And now the edit is a legacy. A new version of human inheritance. It spreads, quietly. Unseen. Permanent. You turn back to Lulu and Nana. Their story is not finished. They are still young. Healthy, as far as anyone knows. But their genomes carry questions. Not just about what was changed, but about what may have been missed. CRISPR is precise, but not perfect. Sometimes, changes ripple outward, in ways unseen, affecting other genes, other expressions, other futures. These are called off-target effects. Mistakes made in the edit. Like erasing a letter and changing the meaning of the next sentence entirely. And in humans, the stakes are not just academic. They are emotional. Existential. What if an edit meant to protect introduces a weakness? What if the removal of one gene creates a gap we do not understand? You feel the pause again. The place where the silence stirs. Because this is the garden we are entering. One child at a time. One decision. One dream. And while the flowers bloom, so do the questions. What will it mean to grow up? Knowing your genes were shaped by design? What will it mean to not be edited? In a world where others were? Will it feel like falling behind? Or staying true to something older than choice? These are not questions for science alone. They belong to all of us. To parents. To children. To philosophers and poets and patients alike. And so, you leave the lab now. Not in protest. Not in praise. But in wonder. You return to the quiet of your own breath. To the spirals inside you. That remain untouched. Unique. Unpredictable. You remember that not all gifts are chosen. Some are born in silence. Some in suffering. Some in the slow growth of resilience. Through what could not be planned. And as you drift, you carry the image of the child. Not designed, but discovered. A life unfolding. Not written in code, but in moments. Still, the question lingers. What if we could go back and edit not just the children, but the very path to life itself? You drift again, this time not into the body, but into memory. Not yours, but the world's. You float along the edges of global thought, where science and silence meet, where headlines blur like ripples on a pond. The year is 2018. The world hums as usual. Trains move, children laugh, coffee brews. And beneath it all, something quiet unfolds in a hospital in southern China. You move closer. Not with your feet, but with your attention. Like breath leaning toward a whisper. Here, 2 baby girls are born. Tiny, whole, blinking in the fluorescent hush. Their names are Lulu and Nana. And while their cries sound like any other newborns, their genomes carry a story no child has carried before. You hover beside the moment. It doesn't feel like a revolution. There is no grand celebration. No televised unveiling. Just a quiet shift beneath the noise. An edit, done before their first breath. Their DNA was changed. With CRISPR. In the embryo. Before implantation. Before memory. Before choice. You drift further in. Into the pages of the news that follow. At first, it is disbelief. Surely not yet, not now, not like this. But yes. The announcement came not from a journal, but a YouTube video. A soft-spoken man in a white shirt. Sitting calmly. Speaking about a breakthrough he believed was history. He Jiankui. A name that blooms and burns in the minds of many. A Chinese biophysicist. Trained abroad, returned home. Carrying the sharp new needle of genetic editing. He believed, or perhaps hoped, that by disabling a gene called CCR5, he could make the children immune to HIV. You remember this gene? A gateway the virus uses to enter cells. Without it, infection becomes much harder. In rare cases, people are born with this mutation naturally. They are resistant. So, he asked, why not give that gift to others? The plan was simple, elegant, revolutionary. The execution, far more complex. You float now through the questions. Did the parents fully understand? Were they offered money? Consent? Were they told about the unknowns? The off-target edits? The ripple effects? The possibilities we haven't yet imagined? Some say yes. Some say no. Even now, the answers remain blurred. But the result is undeniable. 2 human beings now carry edits. Not found in either parent. Change is introduced by a hand. Not by chance. You pause in the echo of that thought. This is the threshold. The moment where science steps out of theory. Out of peer review and laboratory. Into life. And the world reacts. Outrage blooms like smoke. Scientists speak. Some with horror. Some with hesitation. Some with a guilty awe. Because this was not just a leap. It was a fracture in the pace of progress. The world was not ready. Or maybe it simply hadn't admitted it was. You imagine Lulu and Nana growing up. 2 children who carry, unknowingly, a chapter of human history written into their cells. They may never feel different. Or perhaps they always will. Their CCR5 gene is gone. Snipped with precision. Though reports later show that the edit wasn't perfect. One child may have had both copies disabled. The other, only one. And more than that. What else was touched? What gene sat beside CCR5? And did the cut change their behavior? There are whispers that removing CCR5 may do more than affect HIV risk. It may affect brain development. It may influence memory, learning. It may, in some models, even enhance certain cognitive functions. But none of this was tested. None of it was certain. And so Lulu and Nana walk into the unknown, bearing edits that might shield them. Or reshape them. They will grow. Go to school. Make friends. Ask questions. And one day, they will learn. Learn that their lives began. Not only with love, but with an experiment. What does that do to a child's sense of self? To know they were chosen. But also changed. To know they were edited. Not to survive, but to be improved. You move gently through these questions. There are no sharp corners here. Only soft weight. Like snow on shoulders. The man who made the edit, He Jiankui, was arrested. Convicted. Silenced. The world exhaled. But the edit remained. And so did the possibility. You see now the quiet irony. That while the scientific community condemned the act, the science behind it worked. CRISPR cut where it was told. The edits took hold. The children were born. In that truth lies both the fear and the future. Because if it worked once, even imperfectly, it can work again. And perhaps, next time, more precisely. The temptation is strong. To fix disease. To rewrite fate. To spare a child the pain written into their inheritance. You imagine a parent holding a vial. Inside it, a future. A chance to remove blindness. Or cancer. or loss. How hard it would be to say no. And so we drift, as a species. Not into chaos, but into choice. Each year, more countries update their policies. Some permit research. Some forbid implantation. Some look the other way. The map is inconsistent. But the direction is clear. Toward a world where genes are no longer private. Where health is written not by nature, but by design. And yet, even now, the shadows of Lulu and Nana remain. Two children. Real. Present. Growing. Carrying within them the echo of a question that has not yet been answered. What does it mean to be the first of your kind? Not the first to walk on the moon. Not the first to cross a sea. But the first whose DNA was rewritten before they were born. You pause now. In this still place between possibility and consequence. You remember that every change, no matter how gentle, creates a new direction. And once that direction is chosen, 1,000 other paths vanish. What if the world forgets that? What if edits become expectations? What if the miracle of variation is seen as a flaw? You think again of the spiral. The double helix. Twisting through every cell like a lullaby. Its elegance is not in its perfection, but in its openness to change. Natural change. Slow change. Change that arises not from control, but from chaos. The edits we now make cut faster than evolution ever could. But what do we lose when we move faster than time? You drift from China now. From the hospital, the lab, the courtroom. But the story stays with you. The story of a man who acted too soon. The story of a science that moved too fast. The story of two girls who became more than children. Symbols, questions. Living echoes of a moment. When we crossed the line between reading life and rewriting it. And still, you wonder. What happens when this power leaves the lab entirely? When it moves not through institutions, but through startups, through investors, through open source code? What happens when anyone can learn to edit life from a laptop? You lie quietly. Your breath slow. Your body heavy with rest. But your thoughts are feather light. Floating into the folds of an uncertain future. You've journeyed through spirals of code. Watched needles stitch and snip life's story. Stood beside the first children whose genes were edited before their first breath. And now, a question forms. Not sharp, but soft. Like fog over water. Where does the boundary lie? Between healing and designing? You drift deeper. Into the space where ethics unfold. Not as rules, but as reflections. You begin not with science, but with desire. Because that's where it often starts. A parent, sitting in a quiet room, dreaming of a child. A wish, spoken softly. Let them be healthy. Let them be happy. But as tools become sharper, the wish begins to widen. What if they could be taller? What if they could be smarter? Faster? More beautiful? Not out of vanity. Not out of greed. But out of love. And fear. And the quiet ache to protect a future. You understand this longing. To give your child the best chance. To remove the risks. To soften the sharp edges of life. Before they ever appear. But you also know. Not all edges are meant to be sanded down. Some are the very shape of who we are. You imagine a world where genetic editing is routine. A world where CRISPR is not a marvel, but a service. You enter a clinic. Modern, serene, wrapped in soft light. You're shown a screen. A dozen potential embryos. Each one charted and scored. Likelihood of heart disease. Projected height. Estimated IQ. Risk of depression. You are not forced to choose. But the implication hangs in the air. Like a silent bell. If you could avoid hardship, why wouldn't you? This is not science fiction. Already, pre-implantation genetic testing offers glimpses. Not edits, but selection. Choosing among the possible. Not creating the impossible. Yet the line grows thin. When does choice become pressure? When the option exists. Does it become a duty? You rest inside this paradox. Because science gives us possibility. But not permission. CRISPR can alter genes. But it cannot tell us which changes are wise. Or kind. Or just. You drift now into a thought experiment. What if you remove a gene linked to sadness? The child might be more resilient. Less prone to depression. But would they also lose something essential? The melancholy that deepens art. The sorrow that fosters empathy. The shadows that teach the shape of joy. Would they be stronger? Or shallower? Or both? You think of diversity. Not just in skin or language. But in how we think, feel, love. The world is not made of one type of person. It is made of contrasts. And what if we edit our way out of contrast? What if we converge toward a narrow idea of better? You picture a future where sameness becomes safety. Where perfection is no longer an aspiration, but a requirement. A child born without edits may be seen as defective, left behind in the great optimization of humanity. But you know, what's left behind in such a race is not just risk. It's soul. And here, you feel the ethical weight. Because it is not unethical to wish for health. But it is dangerous to confuse control with care. Genes do not make the whole of a person. They are seeds. They shape the soil. But so much depends on sunlight. And storms. And time. You turn your mind to the idea of fairness. Would genetic editing deepen inequality? Would the wealthy afford sharper, stronger children, while others fall behind? Would a child's opportunities be determined not by nurture or effort, but by prenatal edits? The gap between rich and poor could become encoded in the genome. A genetic caste. This too is not a distant dream. It is a real fear. Echoed by ethicists, scholars, and even scientists who helped pioneer the technology. And yet, not all editing is enhancement. Some edits prevent unbearable suffering. Diseases that rob breath. Or thought. Or life before it begins. You feel the pain of a parent holding a child with a rare disorder. A life cut short. A future grieved before it blossoms. To them, editing is not a gamble. It is hope. It is not enhancement. It is mercy. And so you ask, can ethics live in nuance? Can we say yes to healing and no to enhancement? Or will the boundary slip? Slowly. Quietly. Until no one remembers where it was? You drift further now. Into the metaphor of a map. Genes are often called a blueprint. A plan, a guide. A design for the body. But blueprints are fixed. They do not adapt. The genome is more like a weather forecast. Probabilities. Patterns. Not guarantees. You may inherit a gene that increases your risk for heart disease. But lifestyle, stress, sleep, the stories you carry, they all matter too. So when we edit the blueprint, we must ask, what do we really know? Science sees patterns, not promises. Removing a gene may remove risk. Or it may change something we didn't expect. Genes talk to one another. Silently, constantly. A symphony of feedback and interaction. You may change one note, and the whole song sounds different. You pause in that metaphor. You hear the music now. The soft melody of a life unfolding. Not perfect, but meaningful. The ethics of tomorrow. Begin with a choice today. Not a choice of tools, but of values. Who do we want to become? Not just as individuals, but as a species? Do we chase perfection? Or accept the wild, unexpected beauty of chance? Do we edit to fit a vision? Or do we broaden the vision to include more kinds of thriving? The calmest waters can be disturbed by the smallest ripple. And in the pool of the future, every edit is a ripple. Lulu and Nana were the first, but they will not be the last. And each decision to follow will echo through generations, like a thread tugged through time. You return now to your breath. Slow, even, present. The future is not written. It never is. It unfolds. And it listens. To science. To silence. To questions like yours. As you drift toward sleep, another thought begins to stir. Not in the lab. Not in policy. But in the quiet basement. Where anyone, with enough curiosity, might pick up the code of life. You begin tonight's journey beneath a vast canopy. A forest made not of leaves, but of possibilities. Each branch holds a story, each root reaches into time. This is the forest of evolution. Not a place of order, but of emergence, not a blueprint, but a mosaic, built slowly, beautifully, through trial and surprise. You wander slowly, the ground beneath your feet is rich with forgotten ancestors, their breath still lingers in your lungs, their silent genes curled in your blood like leaves pressed into old pages. You carry all of them, their triumphs, their flaws, their mutations, small quirks passed from body to body until they became you. And none of it was planned. Nature did not sit down with a pen, she let things happen, she let accidents sing, and some of those accidents became wings. You pause by a stream, its water glides over stones like time over skin. A beetle flashes iridescent in the dim light. A hummingbird zips past, weightless and strange. Each life form here is a miracle of mistakes. A tapestry not curated, but discovered. You are one of them. A body shaped by chance, not just your own, but millions before you, mutations that survived, diversities that didn't just thrive, they protected. In populations, variety is strength, some bodies resist heat. Others, cold, some lungs thrive in mountain air, some minds see colors others cannot even name. It is this rich unevenness that protects our species, not perfection, but possibility. You walk among stories, the story of melanin, blooming in skin under a high sun, the story of sickle cells, which once helped bodies resist malaria, the story of lactase, an enzyme that lets adults drink milk, a mutation that followed herding, not birth. Every strength was once a surprise, every adaptation began in the quiet unknown. But now, a hand enters the mosaic. A tool. CRISPR. You remember its precision, the way it slices like moonlight across still water. It offers control. The power to remove, replace, refine. And in doing so, it begins to narrow the wild garden. You imagine a world where variation is no longer valued, where traits outside the median are slowly edited away. A world of symmetry. Of uniform genes. Of children designed to resemble a quiet ideal. The garden becomes a field, clean, predictable, and deeply, deeply fragile. Because when you remove the unexpected, you remove resilience, you forget that the gene we call a flaw today may become a gift tomorrow. You float into the metaphor of the mosaic again. Each tile is different, some smooth, some cracked, some shining oddly in the dark. But together, they create a picture that no single color could. This is who we are. Not a singular pattern, but a tension between order and disorder, a dance between known and unknown. You walk now through a hall of faces, some familiar, some ancient, some never born. You see the vast spectrum of human variation, freckles, gaps in teeth, different shaped eyes and bones and voices. You imagine a future where all those edges are softened. A universal symmetry. No one stands out. No one falters. No one shines. Would we still be human? Or would we become a curated echo of what we once were? Because diversity is not a flaw in the code. It is the signature of life. It is what makes love surprising, what makes art possible, what gives evolution a palette to paint with. Without it, there is no change. No adaptation. No survival. You sit down in the center of this imagined world, this future of clean genomes and quiet sameness. And it feels empty. Not cold, not cruel, just still, like a room with no echoes. You remember a time when difference meant danger, but also survival. In ice ages. In plagues. In migration. In love. You think of the immune system, how its strength comes from difference, how the more varied a population's genes, the better its chances against new threats. You think of endangered species, their genetic pools too shallow to weather change, and you wonder. Could humanity edit itself into fragility? Would we notice the loss, if it came quietly, one edit at a time? One small choice after another, always well-intentioned, always aiming for good. But sameness, even when beautiful, can become brittle. You lie down in the soft grass, above you, stars blink like scattered thoughts. No two shine the same. Your cells hum quietly beneath your skin, a mosaic of chance, of inheritance, of hope. You are not perfect, but you are complete. And the story you carry, with all its folds and freckles and imperfections, is one the world has never told before. CRISPR can remove a gene, but it cannot know the future. It cannot guess what will matter. Or who a life is meant to become. You rise from the grass and walk toward the unknown again, toward the next question, the next door. The next room in this unfolding journey. Because if genes shape the body, what shapes the mind? And can editing change not just what we are, but who? The room is quiet, save for the soft mechanical rhythm of a breathing machine. A slow inhale, a patient exhale. Somewhere beneath its whisper, a child dreams. His body is small, still, imperfect in the eyes of medicine. But his spirit floats, unburdened by genes or cells, roaming clouds where no chromosome can cage him. You sit beside the bed, not as a god, not as a savior, but as a scientist, trembling at the weight of possibility. This chapter of the human story is delicate. Here, the needle does not just carry medicine, it carries the dream of healing, the shadow of power. And you, steady hand in a world full of shaking choices, must ask, how far is too far? You think of CRISPR again. The scissor-like tool that slices DNA with the elegance of intention. With it, diseases can be edited out, one letter at a time, like typos in the script of life. Sickle cell, gone. Muscular dystrophy, silenced. A child spared the weight of pain before they even feel it. You marvel at the mercy of it. And yet, there is another hum beneath the promise, a quieter, more urgent question: when does healing become hubris? In the laboratory, the lines are drawn with ink. You pipette carefully. You culture cells. You label vials with crisp handwriting. But in life, the lines blur. A gene for blindness. A gene for height. A gene for intelligence. A gene for memory. The hands that edit become sculptors of the unseen. And somewhere in the silence between one choice and another, the heart quivers. Can you undo suffering without unraveling what it means to be human? You remember the parents, their faces lit with hope, eyes shining with the ache of love. They are not asking for perfection. They are asking for a chance. Can you make sure she can run without pain? Can you make sure he can speak someday? These are not the prayers of vanity. These are the whispered wishes of those who've seen a child ache and cannot bear it again. So you sit with their questions. You sit with their fears. You sit with your own reflection, not in a mirror of glass, but in the mirror of your intention. You think of the first germline-edited babies, a decision made not in consensus, but in secrecy. It was meant to be a leap forward, but it felt like a step into fog. The scientific world reeled, not because the science failed, but because the silence around it was too loud. The choice had bypassed humility. To heal a child is sacred. But to choose for them who they become, what they look like, how they think, what risks they'll never take, that is no longer healing. That is authorship. That is crafting the future in your own image, not theirs. You wonder, what if we edit out not just pain, but difference? Not just illness, but unpredictability? Would we lose the artists born from struggle? The thinkers forged in stillness? The rebels that challenged because their minds saw the world sideways? You sip your tea in the quiet of thought. Science, after all, is not cold. It is warm with possibility. But possibility without pause can become peril. Outside, the world moves with haste. There are companies offering gene optimization, biohacking retreats, embryo rankings based on polygenic scores. They speak of enhancement, a future of better, smarter, stronger. The language is alluring. But you feel the subtle erosion beneath it. The slow drift from healing into design. You imagine the child again. This time older. Standing tall, cured of a cruel disease. But what else did you edit out? A tendency toward shyness? A disposition toward melancholy? A slowness that might have made them patient? Healing, you remind yourself, is not the same as removing all obstacles. Because sometimes the obstacles shape us. Sometimes they are the quiet teachers that whisper resilience into our bones. And yet, there are things no child should suffer. There is pain so great it darkens every day. You know this. You have seen it. Genes that rob breath. Genes that twist limbs. Genes that trap children inside broken machinery. If you can spare them that fate, shouldn't you? You take a breath, long and slow. This is the tightrope. On one side, compassion. On the other, control. And beneath it all, the unknown. You walk carefully, not because you are afraid, but because you care too much to run. The future is not a clean slate. It is a living canvas. Some colors are bright. Some are messy. Some are scars that become stories. You think of your own imperfections, the stutter that once embarrassed you, the anxiety that shaped your quiet strength. You would not erase them. They taught you how to listen, how to observe, how to care. They made you this version of yourself. And so, when the parents return and ask again, "Can you help our child?" You do not promise perfection. You promise presence. You promise care wrapped in caution. You promise to walk with them, not ahead, not above, but beside. In the language of science, you offer transparency. In the language of ethics, you offer humility. And in the language of the heart, you offer love. Because that is what the child needs most. Not a designer. Not a god. But a human who dares to heal without hubris. You reach for the genome, not with ambition, but with awe. Not to conquer, but to understand. Not to rewrite humanity, but to ease its ache, carefully, kindly. The wind outside rustles the trees like the whisper of a child's dream. And as you close the file on today's work, you carry with you not just the data, but the weight of responsibility, gentle, sacred, vast. For in healing, we must remember the human. And in science, we must never forget the soul. You drift forward through time like a feather on still air. Not flying, not falling, just floating, softly. The present fades behind you, the future stretches ahead, a quiet horizon of questions, aglow with possibility. You are not afraid. This journey is gentle. You are only here to wonder. What would the world feel like if every child was edited before they breathed their first breath? You imagine a cradle in a softly lit room. The infant sleeping inside is not chosen for wealth or beauty, but something quieter, precision. She will never know the sharp taste of a genetic illness. She will never go blind. Her heart will not falter early. She will not inherit the sadness that once flowed like a hidden river through generations. She is optimized. Not in arrogance, but in care. This, you're told, is progress. The tools that once cut DNA now glide like brushes over a canvas. Every embryo scanned. Every variant weighed. Scores for resilience, intelligence, temperament. Not guaranteed outcomes, just probabilities gently nudged toward a better future. A future sculpted not by nature, but by design. You walk through this imagined future and listen. Children in classrooms learn with minds that seem clearer, faster. No one struggles to read. No one forgets. They sing in perfect pitch. They solve puzzles before questions are fully asked. Every hand raised is sure. Every gaze, untroubled. And yet, you notice something else. The music is softer. The laughter, symmetrical. The edges where personality once shimmered feel smoothed. You look closer. The spark of mischief, that twist of unexpected creativity, where is it? You wonder, when you design for strength, do you quiet fragility? And if you quiet fragility, do you also hush the wisdom that rises from it? You meet a boy with a perfect memory. He can recite history, code in multiple languages, and never forget a name. But when you ask how he feels, his answer is practiced, not personal. It's as though his mind has sprinted ahead of his heart. You meet a girl with the body of an athlete, the vision of an eagle, the disposition of calm certainty. But when the wind changes, she doesn't pause to feel it. She's optimized for stability, not surprise. And so you ask yourself, softly. Is this what we meant by better? Is this what we hoped for when we opened the genome's gate? You remember a time when life was wild, not cruel, but uncertain. A child might be born with dyslexia but grow up to write stories that ripple through time. A boy might speak late but sing deeply. A girl might fall, again and again, and become the one who understands how to help others rise. You realize, it was never just about removing pain. It was about holding on to difference, the unpredictable, the raw, the crooked paths that lead somewhere beautiful. In this polished world, no one stumbles. But no one dances wildly either. You turn your gaze to the city skylines of this future. They are clean, shining, efficient. No graffiti, no slums, no disease. Everyone smiles, or is trained to. And beneath the stillness, you feel a strange ache. Not nostalgia. Something deeper, the quiet mourning of variance lost. You sit beside a river that runs straight. The water is clear, fast, purposeful. But you miss the bend, the meander. You miss the wildflowers that once grew in the messy margins. You think of the word generation, and how it used to mean emergence. Each child a bloom of random beauty. Now it feels closer to generation as in machine cycles, new models, annual updates. Children as systems, not symphonies. And yet, you understand. You understand the parents who would do anything to protect. You understand the scientists who dreamed not of control, but of care. You understand the governments who feared inequality, disease, despair. This future did not come from evil. It came from love. But even love, when untethered from humility, can drift toward perfection. And perfection, you now see, has its own kind of silence. You wander through a school. In the playground, the children move like a mirrored rhythm. They run faster. Fall less. But when one girl scrapes her knee, she looks around, surprised. Pain was not predicted. She is not sure what to do. A boy kneels to help. He rips the hem of his uniform to bandage her. And in that moment, something unprogrammed unfolds. Compassion. Not taught. Not coded. Just, human. You breathe deeply. There it is. The spark. You follow it now, not in fear, not in judgment, but in curiosity. Is there a way to edit pain without erasing empathy? To invite health without dismissing hardship's strange gifts? To choose without narrowing what it means to be chosen? You pass by a nursery of embryos, glowing orbs suspended in quiet light. Their futures shimmer as possibilities, not promises. Some are edited. Some are not. And you hope, in your heart, that whoever they become, they are allowed to grow not toward perfection, but toward presence. You step gently into a quiet corner of this future. Here, someone has made a garden that is not symmetrical. Its paths curve. Its flowers bloom unevenly. A boy with mismatched eyes sits reading poetry. A girl with a tremor in her hand draws birds in flight. They are not optimized. They are human. You smile. Perhaps the CRISPR future need not be a choice between all or nothing. Perhaps it can be a spectrum. Between healing and uniqueness. Between protection and permission. Between design and discovery. And perhaps the greatest act of care is not in editing out uncertainty, but in preparing to meet it with kindness when it arrives. You return now, slowly, from this imagined time. You carry with you not a verdict, but a question. What kind of future do we want to feel? Not just functionally, but deeply, soulfully. You listen. To the echo of footsteps not yet walked. To the murmur of dreams not yet born. The future is still unwritten. And its song, you hope, will still surprise us. You stand before a cradle. The room is still, bathed in the blue hush of early morning. Curtains breathe softly in rhythm with the world. A baby lies beneath them, wrapped in warmth, eyes closed, unaware of the decisions made on their behalf. And you watch, you wonder, you wait. They do not know yet that their genes were edited. That choices were made in silence. That certain futures were quietly erased. Before their voice was even born. You place your hand on the wooden edge of the cradle. It feels steady. Ancient. The weight of generations pressed into grain and varnish. And yet the life within this cradle is new in a way no human has ever been. Not born merely from biology, but from intention. You sit beside the baby and listen. To the tiny breaths. To the heartbeat that pulses like a soft question. To the echoes of decisions that cannot be undone. The science was precise. No disease will stir in this child's blood. No inherited suffering. No rare disorder. The edits were exact, clean and kind. And yet, something stirs in you. Not doubt, but stillness. The kind that comes before a question. You ask it gently, in the quiet of your own thoughts. Can we make choices for those who have no voice? Is love enough to justify forever? You remember the idea of consent. The sacred pause before touch. The breath before agreement. The freedom to choose, and the right to refuse. But here, in this room, in this cradle, there was no pause. There was only trust. Trust that the parents knew best. Trust that science could serve. Trust that a life with less suffering is worth the price of unchosen change. And perhaps it is. Perhaps this child will grow to thank the silence they never felt. Perhaps they will never know what was taken. Only what was spared. But still, you ask. Is there a cost hidden in that kindness? You imagine the future. This child, now grown. Sitting with the knowledge of who they are, and who they were never allowed to be. Will they feel grateful? Or will they feel written? Will they say, "You saved me"? Or whisper, "You never asked"? You drift through these questions slowly, like a boat over deep waters. The surface calm. But beneath, ethical currents twist and swirl. A child cannot consent to the genes they receive. But then again, no child ever has. Birth has always been a lottery, of DNA, of geography, of chance. But now, we hold the power to stack the deck. To shape, to soften, to protect. You see the kindness in that. The mercy. And yet, the deeper the choice, the deeper the silence around it. You think of parents who once faced impossible grief. Of watching a child fade from a disease that could have been prevented. Now, they choose. They act. They edit, not to sculpt, but to spare. Their love is not in question. But love, too, must be examined when it crosses time's threshold. You turn to philosophy, gently. To the stories of autonomy. To the idea that freedom is not just action, but the absence of pre-written scripts. You return your gaze to the cradle. The baby stirs. Eyes flutter. A soft coo escapes like a ripple across the room. And in that moment, you feel something sacred. The mystery of life unfolding, unknowing, unstoppable. You wonder how this child will grow into their body. Into their story. Into the edits made before they could dream. You wonder if they will someday ask. Was I loved, or was I designed? It is not an accusation. Only a whisper. And you know, there are no perfect answers. You breathe slowly, letting the uncertainty settle. Ethics, after all, is not about clean conclusions. It is about holding complexity with care. You think of the storm, not loud, not violent. But quiet and moral. A storm of questions swirling around the cradle. Who decides? How far is too far? And can choice exist, without the chooser? You imagine the future councils of science and policy. Rooms filled with minds trying to draw lines around freedom. But freedom, you know, cannot always be measured. Sometimes it is felt only in its absence. You close your eyes and imagine your own story. The things you did not choose. The hurts that shaped you. The weaknesses that softened you. Would you erase them, if you could? Would you let someone else decide that for you? Perhaps not. And yet, you are here. Alive. Questioning. Grateful. Not perfect, but present. You return to the room. The baby sleeps again. The morning light shifts softly across the floor. The world continues, uncertain but turning. You do not come away with answers tonight. Only with a gentler kind of wonder. Maybe the best we can do is hold this power with tenderness. To wield science with humility. To let love ask harder questions, not fewer. And maybe, just maybe, the child, when grown, will understand. Not because they were given a voice before birth, but because we listened in silence after. Because we stayed near the cradle. Because we asked, even when no one could answer. Because we understood that the smallest hearts deserve the greatest care. The storm does not pass. It softens. It slows. It becomes a wind we live beside. Always listening. And as you rise from the cradle, you feel that listening is its own kind of love. You return. Not suddenly, but gently. Like light drifting across a still lake. Or the hush that follows a deep exhale. You have journeyed through time and thought. Through cradle and clinic. Through ethics and awe. And now, you come home. To your own body. To your own breath. You lie back and feel the rhythm of your chest. The quiet work of lungs and heart. The deep intelligence humming inside you. Not taught, not chosen, just inherited. And you wonder. What does it mean to live with what we change? CRISPR, that tiny, deliberate tool, still glows in your mind. A pair of molecular scissors. Snipping, stitching, correcting. The ancient story written inside every cell. It sounds so simple. But you know now, it's anything but. Because to change the code is not to change one life. It is to shift the thread that runs through generations. To touch not only the now, but the forever after. And yet, you also know. We have always changed. With fire. With language. With medicine. With love. The tools evolve. But the yearning stays the same. To ease suffering. To protect the fragile. To reach for something kinder than fate. Still, something in you whispers. Progress must be paced by presence. We cannot run forward without returning inward. So now you pause. Not to stop the story. But to settle into it. You begin with your own hands. You stretch your fingers and marvel at how they move. Fluid, faithful, full of memory. Inside them, strands of DNA coil like soft ribbons. Unchanged since before you were born. Some sequences carry quirks. Some carry pain. All carry possibility. You think of your own imperfections. The tendencies you've learned to love. Or at least live with. Maybe you bruise easily. Or startle at loud sounds. Or forget names and remember faces. Would you edit these away? If you could? Maybe. Maybe not. Because now you see that every trait is threaded through context. A gene doesn't live alone. It lives in you. In your culture, your choices, your rhythms. CRISPR may touch the letters. But you write the meaning. You shift your attention outward. To the world that surrounds you. A world already living with change. Therapies in trial. Children spared diseases once thought certain. Hope blooming in once hopeless places. And yet, the old patterns remain too. Inequity. Desire disguised as destiny. Power tiptoeing into the language of care. You feel it. The double edge of progress. The same tool that saves one life. Might silently reshape another. Based not on need. But on preference. And so you ask yourself. Can we carry this power without letting it carry us? The answer does not arrive quickly. But perhaps it doesn't need to. Because living with what we change means making peace with partial understanding. It means asking questions even when we cannot answer them. It means staying awake in the presence of ambiguity. Softly, without fear. You imagine the next generation. Not engineered for perfection. But born into a world more mindful. Where the tools of editing are held like sacred instruments. Not levers of control. You picture a parent explaining the story of a child's genome. Not as a triumph. But as a thought. Full step taken in a long walk of care. I chose this, they might say. So you wouldn't suffer. But I did not choose all of you. You are still a surprise. And I am still learning how to love every piece of you. You exhale. That kind of future feels soft. Not utopian. But open. You return again to your body. To your heartbeat. To your name. You are not perfect. But you are present. And presence, you realize, is the most powerful edit of all. You stretch further, into history. Into ancestry. Into the quiet march of molecules that became memory. Your ancestors didn't have CRISPR. They had songs. They had stories. They had instincts passed down in kitchens and on battlefields. In lullabies and whispered prayers. You carry them still. And maybe, just maybe, the future isn't only shaped by what we cut, but by what we choose to remember. You feel it now. The sacred duality. We are editors. We are carriers. We are choosers. We are chosen. You lie still and watch your ceiling fade into shadow. Night deepens. And still, the world turns. Gently, with you in it. CRISPR is not the final thread. It is one of many. Woven into the vast, shimmering fabric of who we are becoming. You think of the child in the cradle again. Then the child who grew. Then yourself. Then everyone. All of us. Some edited, some not. Living inside stories we're only beginning to read. And so you live. With the knowledge. With the wonder. With the questions still opening like flowers toward the sun. Not to master biology. But to meet it with reverence. Not to outrun evolution. But to walk alongside it, thoughtfully. You close your eyes and feel the warmth of your own breath. It is unchanged and yet transformed by every thought that has passed through you tonight. The future is not something waiting far ahead. It is here. Tucked quietly in every small decision. In every gentle refusal to rush. In every act of pause. In every honest wondering. You live with what we change. Because you must. And because you can. And within that quiet responsibility is something beautiful. The ongoing choice to care.